Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Kinguin Pro League 2015 with me, Monk. We just casted Life Coach versus Dog. Dog took the win with a seemingly well-tailored lineup to beat, I guess, Life Coach's predicted Mech Mage, who fell short of beating any of the decks that Life Coach that Dog brought. The games were close, at least two of them were pretty close, which was really interesting, but it wasn't enough. So Hyped versus Reynad is going to be coming up next. Both players are on the same team, Tempo Storm. It's going to be a team kill, kind of like the first week's Nihilum team kill with Life Coach versus RDU. We're going to see how things go. Reynad is currently 2-2 in the KPL, and Hyped is 3-1.
Yeah, in other games, such as StarCraft, for example, whenever you have team kills, there's a lot of mind games going into the team kills. Like, will one player play really greedily? Will one player just rush the opponents down? And it's kind of like who can out-mind game the other. And one problem that I've seen a lot of players make is they think too much into the mind games, and they just don't play what they're comfortable with. And we're going to see if either of these players goes in with that mentality.
Yeah, I know that Reynad is generally a player that's fairly consistent. I mean, they probably both know each other. They've been in Tempo Storm for the longest time. I mean, Reynad founded it, and Hyped was picked up pretty much immediately. So they know each other, and they know the play styles. They know their strengths, their weaknesses. Hyped is a player who favors. I think I want to say Hyped is a player who played Rogue the most in the entire world. I might be lying, but I feel like. Who was it? Admirable was telling me he played upwards of 10,000 games with his Rogue, 10,000 wins or something. It's a ridiculous amount.
That seems fairly accurate. Hyped is a player that he just mainly plays the classes he's comfortable with. For example, I don't think I've ever seen him play Handlock or Priest, right?
Yeah.
It's basically just Rogue, his
Mage
own types of his own types of Mage, and then what else does he play? Druid, of course. Who doesn't play Druid?
I mean, it's a deck you can pilot pretty easily without necessarily having to put, an insane amount of time into it. So it's a deck you get comfortable with very fast, I'd say.
Yeah. And a lot of players have been saying that that's kind of his weakness. Hyped was ranked #1 on the NA server last year in terms of BlizzCon points, but he hasn't really been putting up the results as of late. He's hasn't been winning the tournaments as you might expect from him, as players like Kalento and Firebad have.
Well, Dog and Hyped are two players, and I mention that every single time. They're two players that have been performing really well. They're really solid players, you can tell, but none of them has a huge tournament win under their belt, right? They have good results. They're known by the community. Whenever they show up, they just play super well, but never have they won this big title that they really want to get.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Reynad he does have a title on his belt, the Battle of the Best 2015 Invitational #1.
Yep, I was casting that. He was playing Blinktron Mech Mage with the Water Elementals, and that was kind of entertaining. And we've got, I know Reynad, I think, wants to get another win under his belt, like a bigger event even than that. I think that's something he definitely wants to get. As the founder of a team like Tempo Storm, you want to get the wins that the most wins you can possibly get. They're both going to be playing an interesting lineup, I'd say. Not something I really expected, if I have to be honest. Hyped is playing Mage and Rogue and Warrior, and Reynad is playing Druid, Hunter, and Warrior. So both players playing Warrior in this lineup.
Yeah, I think Reynad has to be thinking that he knows that Hyped will probably bring Rogue, so he's probably going to try to bring decks that counter the Rogue. Like, for example, Fast Druid typically has a slight advantage against Rogue.
Yep.
Phase Hunter has a huge advantage against Rogue, and Control Warrior also has another huge advantage against Rogue. So it could be another case of how Reynad can snipe his opponent.
Yeah, I mean, we know Hyped is a very comfortable player when it comes to Rogue, and if Reynad knows that, he's going to be bringing the counter picks. Now, one thing you have to know about Hyped is that as far as building Rogue decks, he's probably the master of switching his game around. I mean, I've seen him play all sorts of decks, ranging from, the hyper-aggressive Rogues to something a bit slower, like the Oil Rogue, but he has an even slower version with Dr. Boom Ragnaros and Traitorous Scallywix that he still does play. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him play something maybe a little less expectable, that Reynad might not, be expecting necessarily. If it's standard Oil Rogue, then Reynad has a good matchup, but if there's more minions, and it includes piloted Shredders, then Hyped might just be able to take the game.
Yeah, we even see him, I've seen him play like Mech Rogue, for example, with the Iron Sensei. And he's actually piloted that deck to the top of the NA ladder. He says it beats Phase Hunters and it beats mid-range Hunters. And at a time when Hunters are really dominant, That's pretty much all you need to get to the top ranks.
Yeah, at the point where everybody's playing it to counter, because the thing is, Face Hunter is a deck that's got a really easy time of punishing unrefined decks, and because the metagame's been so unstable with GVG, and I want to say that, like, the metagame's been really unstable, Face Hunters have had a prevalence in the metagame that's been out of proportion. It's been disproportionate recently because the metagame is still evolving. How many months are we after GVG and we still see new decks come out, new ideas, decks being refined, and Face Hunter is perfect at taking advantage of that, and so is Fast Druid, hence why you tend to see those decks at the top of the ladder no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. I think those two decks are pretty much on top of the ladder along with like Oil Rogue and Demon Lock. So it speaks to like after the metagame has like kind of settled down, after we've learned pretty much everything there is to know about GVG, that those decks that were really good before GVG are still really good after GVG.
Yeah, and it's something I don't think we're gonna get away from them even after BRM. Hopefully, we'll see some new decks come out. I mean, we will see some new decks come out. I have no doubt with the advent of the dragons and stuff like Dragon Consort. I really just want to see how Emperor Thorson really impacts the metagame.
Yes.
I'm casting on Tuesday. Next Tuesday, Kinguin Pro League is going to have all those cards. You know, people will have unlocked the first wing. So that means I'll get to see some decks that contain those new ones, and hopefully surprises await.
Well, you know what, Noxious? Black Rock Mountain, or at least the first wing, has been out for like 1 or 2 hours so far.
Yeah.
And both these players are North American players, so they might have locked Black Rock Mountain the first wing.
Are they going to be playing on NA? Because if they are, then that's going to be insane. Like they might have had pre-built decks with specific cards in mind that they unlocked from BRM.
Yeah, it's possible as well.
I'd love to see that. You know, if Hyped had an idea of a specific deck that he wants, and he wants to include Emperor into it, then he can just bring that and sprinkle it in.
Yeah, I feel like Hyped is the kind of player who would just try the new stuff, and Reynad is as well. Like Reynad, I was watching his stream yesterday, and he was saying that like he's getting, like, to be honest, he's getting a little tired of Hearthstone.
Yeah.
He's getting frustrated whenever he plays it, and he's really like looking for something new. So we're getting word from the admins that the players can't actually use the new cards today.
Okay.
So,
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That's
It's too bad. Yeah,
That's
I
alright.
really wanted to see it. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, the metagames, it's coming out today, so it'd be a little unfair if some players can get it and some others can't. So we'll have to see on Tuesday. We'll probably see those new decks. So
yeah, for example, when Naxxramas came out, some players were locked out of Naxxramas.
Right.
They couldn't play it. So if the same thing were to occur again, it would be kind of unfair for some players to have the cards and other players to not have the cards.
yeah, that would be a little bit of a disadvantage. So Reynad's lineup with the Druid, Hunter, Warrior. Druid and Hunter, I understand. Warrior, again, another surprise for me. But we saw Mech Warrior today, so I don't even know what to expect anymore. And Reynad is a player that I expect to be playing, you know, fairly standard, consistent decks, but he's good at spinning decks to tailor them to his playstyle.
Yeah, we never know how many Blingtron 3000s are in his decks, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Reynad is a great deck builder. If anything, I think I have to give him credit for that. It's a great deck builder, and I love the way that he builds new decks. He will take archetypes that already exist, just put a spin on them. But sometimes, you know, Flood Mage, for instance, right? Building a zoo post GVG with Mage that doesn't include mechs, you know, all that much. So it's just kind of it was a surprise to me when I saw Flood Mage. Obviously, it's not at the top of the ladder at the moment. In fact, it's probably somewhere near the mid to bottom of the Legend ladder, but it's a deck that can compete in tournament environments, and I really do like that.
Yeah, speaking of Flood Mage, I'd be really excited to see if Hyped is actually going to use Flood Mage against his boss Reynad, who invented the deck, right?
Yeah, Reynad invented everything. I mean, I don't think Hyped can bring any deck that Reynad didn't invent anyway.
That's true. Well, Reynad did invent Hearthstone, so it's going to be like Hyped is always playing a game that Reynad has invented.
Yeah, that's the kind of the problem there. He doesn't really have the edge since Reynad invented it all. It's kind of hard to mind game a player who knows everything.
Well, there's a rumor going around that Reynad actually invented Hyped, so
that seems kind of logical. I mean, they do have 3 letters in common in their name, E, D, and H. I mean, no, that fail. No,
why?
That didn't work. Why?
Wait.
Yeah, Y, D, and E. There's no H in Reynad.
Yeah. Okay, so we're getting.
Hey Nad.
Oh man. Hey Nad.
All right,
Nad.
so Reynad is gonna be playing Druid, and Hyped is gonna be playing Warrior first.
So obviously that's going to be a favorable matchup for the Druid. But I
Yep.
feel like, as we talked about before in the first match, it's going to be less favorable since GVG came out. I feel like Shield Maiden really changed changed the matchup slightly in the more towards the Warriors' favor. Of course,
Yeah.
it's still in the Druids' favor, but it's kind of closer to 50-50.
Just ask
Also,
Fibonacci, really.
yeah, Fibonacci. Oh man, that guy. Fibonacci, like for those of you who don't know him, he is like people talk about Sho and Kit Kats being the warrior god. Fibonacci is the true warrior god. He is like, in my mind, he's undoubtedly the best warrior player in the world, and he's taken #1 legend on NA and he's held it for like close to 3 weeks straight. Like players such as Trumped or Strifecrow have taken it away from him for a few hours at a time. But whenever he sees that he's not ranked #1 anymore, he just takes it back straight away.
Yeah, he just goes for it, and he uses Warrior all the time, pretty much. He will switch up his game in general, like a few times, but in general, you always see him play Warrior. It's like, it's a player that doesn't get nearly the recognition I think that he should for some reason. Like everybody in the pro scene knows him, everybody who's playing high on ladder knows him, but it's not a name that you see out there as much as, you know, somebody like Hyped or, you know, the players that play in tournaments very often.
Yeah, I definitely like. He is probably one of my favorite players to watch who's not known. In fact, probably my favorite player to watch who's not known. And I would definitely sometime. But speaking of the scene, we have a game going on right now. Reynad innervates out of shade, turn 1.
Yep, sounds balanced, and that's probably one of the best times to do that, pretty obviously. Themselves at this point. You got a Wild Growth, you play Wild Growth.
Yeah, why not?
Ooh, Unstable Ghoul is back.
Oh, you know what? Unstable Ghoul means that this might be just Fibonacci's deck card for card because Fibonacci, his ranked #1 legend deck, includes 1 Unstable Ghoul.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's the differences between his deck and some standard decks are that it has 1 Unstable Ghoul and it cuts the Ragnaros for a Gorehowl. And those are pretty much the only differences. There's no other weird cards like Pilot Shredder or Bomb Lobber, for instance.
Okay. Whereas you
else,
did see that from Zale as well, who played like
Yeah.
Frothing Berserker.
yeah. And also, there's no silences in this deck, and there's 2 shield blocks.
And 2 Shield Maidens.
Yeah,
Madison.
and of course 2 shield.
Yeah,
Maidens,
of course, right. It's the thing that some people thought it was a bad card. I remember, like, I would read Reddit when initially Shield Maiden was announced, and everybody was saying Shield Maiden was kind of meh, but most pro players who played Warrior were just like always saying, this is a really good card. I don't know why people are reacting so adversely to it, and it turns out it is in fact a really good card. It's pretty much a double staple in every Warrior deck. Well, hello lady, we were talking about you.
Yeah. We have a pair of twins. And a lot of twins, actually. 2 War Axes as well. We have the 2 Shield Maidens. We can give each of them a Fire War Axe.
Yeah, we could arm them up. Never mind, Garish stole one.
Yeah,
Punish him.
unfortunately. So a good start from Reynad, but he's about to run out of cards. Fortunately, like this turn is kind of awkward, I guess.
This turn for Hyped is really weird because he can't do anything that's going to be immediately impactful. Everything he does is going to be, you know, it's going to pay off down the line. So he's got to plan about 2 turns ahead here, depending on what he thinks his opponent could play.
Yeah, so the 2 plays I see here are either the Acolyte or the Unstable Ghoul. The Acolyte, of course, is more greedy, and you could possibly put up an Unstable Ghoul behind it in the next turn. But
What if you attack into the Loatheb with everything you got, then drop the Ghoul and re-weapon or armor up, pick your choice.
Yeah.
I like re-weapon a lot, but we'll see what Hype decides to do.
This is going to get somewhat punished by the Keeper of the Grove, but I think it's still going to be fine. Like, you're just missing out the 5 damage.
It was a good call though. I feel like most of the time that's a good play, and if you force a Keeper on the Unstable Ghoul, your Acolyte of Pain is going to draw you cards. It's just that in this position, there's so much damage lying around. You know, the fact that there are bodies on the board that you haven't been able to address, that's the problem. I mean, as soon as Savage Roar comes out, this whole thing goes awry.
Alright, okay.
Awry. I'm not sure which one.
Awry.
Awry. It's
Yeah,
possible.
there it
Awry.
is. There it
Awry.
is,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to Google that.
We figured it out.
Awry pronunciation, or AWRI. How to say or pronounce?
You're actually Googling it right now. That's great.
Awry. Yeah, it's awry. There we go.
Yeah.
You were right. You're right. Your eye.
I was all right.
All right.
All right. So the real question is, does the shade get revealed?
I think so, because you've got Savage Roar, so what could he do here? Attack into the shade with his face? I don't think so. Doesn't seem like a very viable play.
Baron Geddon is not great right now.
I think you just play Shield Maiden as fast as possible and smash that ghoul into Lotheb and hope for the best going forward.
Yeah.
So,
Hope for possibly, I guess, an execute on the next turn or a shield slam.
7, 8, 9, 9 plus 6. That's not lethal quite yet, but it's close though. You have to be honest. That's a really close call, and I'd probably play Sludge Belcher with Wild Growth here to get the possible Force of Nature combo. I don't even mind Wild Growth. It's that, or you get an extra bit of damage and you keep that for card draw.
All right, so just like typical druid, more damage to the face.
Doesn't seem like Hype's gonna have an answer to this, honestly.
Alex Draws is also not what he wants, so
Yeah, a bit late.
unfortunately, this seems like a lost game. Hyped has to go for the shield block now. But even if he does...
Well, Shield Slam could save him. He attacks
Yeah.
the Belcher, he shield blocks, armor up, shield slams the Shade,
That's
and
true.
that would be nice. Or even a BGH even. I think he's got 3 outs possibly in the deck with that shield block, but he needs to find those specific cards. And he decides to go for the Shield Maiden.
That's interesting.
Okay, well that is going to be game. Reynad is going to take it right away with a very quick Savage Roar to the face, and Hyped will go down. Innervate Shade, showing once again the power of Druid.
Yeah, just so much damage. Basically, that Shade did 6 plus 7 plus 10 damage, a total of 23 damage to the warrior.
Yep, that's actually really insane off of an Innervate play. That's crazy.
Yeah, not bad for a single card.
Yeah, I'd venture to say, you know, if a single card can deal that much damage, then you've got to hand it to it. It's funny how no other class really plays Shade. We've seen people try it out in other decks, but it never works quite as well.
Yeah. It's just that the other classes, they can't really innervate or wild growth the Shade out, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably it, actually. The fact that you can't ramp it out makes it a lot weaker.
Yeah, it's essentially like, by ramping it out, you give it +2/+2 stats, essentially.
Yep, because you're 2 turns ahead. So, that means Reynad's got his Druid locked out already, so he's got Hunter and Warrior left against the entire lineup from Hyped. If this is Face Hunter and Control Warrior...
kind of two opposites of the spectrum.
Yeah, but I mean, if Hyped is playing Freeze Mage, then Warrior takes that, and so does Hunter. And Face Hunter also takes Rogue in general, and Control Warriors does it as well. So Reynad's lineup seems like it was well-tailored to counter Hyped.
Yeah, of course. Like, Hyped, of course, is known for his Rogue, so... I think Reynad just countering the Rogue is probably a really great plan.
I mean, it's so standard nowadays in Conquest that players they map out one deck they expect their opponent to play, and they go and play against that. So I think going forward, if Conquest is going to stick around, which I think it will, players will need to start switching their game up a lot more.
Yeah.
They'll have to play many more classes and get comfortable with many more of them.
Again, I feel like this strategy only works if you're able to pick your decks towards your opponent, and it only works in this like kind of league format.
Yeah.
If you go into a tournament and just like try to snipe one player,
right,
you never hit that player,
right?
You're like, oh, I guess I'm really sad at this point.
Right, it is the league format that's encouraging this.
We have seen though players try to snipe a single class that's really popular at the moment. For example, Chalky tried to snipe Rogue in the Root Invitational by bringing 3 Fatigue decks.
Yeah.
Sixo also tried to snipe Rogue in a recent English tournament, or rather a tournament that was based in England. That wasn't Gfinity. It was an online tournament, 8 invited players, and he just brought an anti-Rogue lineup. He expected every other player to bring Rogue, and he was right, and he actually won that tournament.
Okay, so that definitely, like, you could still, and I think that's the beauty of card games in general, is there's a metagame you have to expect. And that's the metagame you have to counter. And I think that's what makes card games interesting in general, you know, baseline. Without the metagame, I think card games would be pretty dull if you were giving preset decks that you just had to play against one another. So when you do have to make the call as to what you're going to be bringing, that brings diversity to the viewers, I guess.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
So the next deck is going to be Rogue from Hyped versus Reynad's Warriors. So Reynad is going to be queuing up a potentially, well, generally favorable matchup. Warriors stacking a lot of armor is making Rogue's life very difficult in general.
Yeah, we saw Hype's warrior didn't do so well, but I think Reynad's warrior is gonna do really well against this rogue. We saw that Hype's kind of probably he was playing the Fibonacci warrior,
Yeah.
and I feel like Reynad might also be playing the same warrior. We saw in previous weeks of Kinguin Pro League that both players were playing kind of a Silent Storm Druid deck list that had Toshli, for example, right?
Yeah. Well, and we've
and-
seen a lot of variants on.
Yeah. And we saw that deck list because Silent Storm hit #1 briefly on NA with that Druid deck. So I think both these players, or players in Tempo Storm in general, are kind of just taking the #1 legend decks and trying to pilot them out in these tournaments in this league.
Well, the players are ready to get into the game, so we should be going in with Warrior versus Rogue very shortly. I'm really curious to see if Hype brought something unique. His Rogue deck building skills are top notch, and I love to see what he brings.
Oh yeah, like I am personally hoping for Mech Rogue. Like
Mech Rogue?
we've seen Mech Warrior today, and we've seen Mech. Obviously, we've seen Mech Shaman, or sorry, Mech Mage.
Mech Mage,
We've
yeah.
seen Mech Shaman in the past. We've seen Mech Druid in the past from Dog, for example.
Right.
And all that's missing is a Rogue. I mean,
Well, we're missing Priest, but I mean, who plays upgraded
Yeah.
repair bot, right?
yeah. I mean, actually, that card is pretty insane. But
It
it's
is
just
good, but it's just so hard to make work in that specific class.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like an ongoing joke, even that like every set will have a priest card that
Yeah.
gives plus health to like some minion. We had like we have a Temple Enforcer, and then we had a Dark Cultist.
Now we
And
got
now-
Twilight Whelp though.
Yeah.
It's
Oh.
amazing, right?
What?
Twilight Whelp is so strong, but it's not buffing something else, right?
Yeah, exactly. So kind of the train has derailed in Black Rock Mountain.
Yeah, but it's I think it's a good theme though. The whole plus health thing. The problem is it's hard to make cards that you will want to play. I like what they did with the I would have been so disappointed if they made like a 6-drop that gave a dragon plus 3 health. Like I would have just that would have been the most boring card to ever implement in Blackrock Mountain. But
Well,
glad
here
they're
we
not
go.
doing it. Let's go into the game here. We see a very standard type of hand from both players.
Yeah, we can't really tell too much about these decks just from the opening hands, but I have a feeling Sprint is going to be kept from Hyped. It's actually really interesting that like you're going to keep a 7-mana spell in your opening hand, right?
Yeah, it's funny because it used to be the case that the only way you drew was through Gadgetzan, but now that it's out of the way, it's almost, and Sprint is almost more consistent because you're gonna get a high amount of cards, no matter what, and you're not as reliant on it. I think Miracle Rogue was a lot more combo oriented, by virtue of requiring the Gadgetzan. The games where you didn't have Gadgetzan were horrible, which is the reason why it went more towards the minion heavy Miracle towards the end of its life. And Oil Rogue picked that tradition back up and brings it back with Sprint. Oh, wow.
Yeah, double Sprint.
Well, one of them is good. 2 of them might be a bit over the top.
Yeah, I think it just really depends on
How many preps?
Yeah, how many preps? Yeah, exactly. How many preps that Hype draws in his opening hand? If you can draw a preparation in the next 2 turns, rather, it'll be pretty great since he'll probably be able to use both sprints.
Yeah, but Reynad is going to be able to be aggressive here in this position. Look at this. He can have the Armor Smith, Acolyte of Pain, Cruel Taskmaster line of play. That's as good as it's going to get for him, I think.
Yeah. Now we see Ragnaros in Reynad's hand, so this is not going to be Fibonacci Warrior. This is probably going to be Reynad Warrior.
Yeah. When does Reynad ever take somebody else's deck, right?
Yeah, exactly. He always makes his own decks. And actually, yeah, that's true. Like he's kind of like Gara in a way, just a less intense version of Gara. He
doesn't go that far. Although he
Yeah.
did bring Windspeaker Shaman to some tournament. I remember
true.
that with and Frodan tried to talk him out of it. He couldn't. He was like, "What are you doing, Reynad?" He was like, "Yo, Windspeaker is the best minion in the game."
Yeah. He actually, I believe in that tournament, he said it was the last Dream Hack of 2014. And he said that, I'm probably going to win this tournament because, or I have a good chance to win the tournament because I'm bringing the best deck in the format, which was Windspeaker Shaman. Fortunately, that never caught on, so
Yeah.
we
We'll
really
never
got to
know.
see-
Yeah.
we never know. We'll never know if that was indeed the best deck in the format.
Well, I think he might be considering a Tinker Sharpsword here to deal with this board over a few turns. I mean, a 4-attack weapon is going to be relevant. He's going to need to get that Acolyte out of the way.
Yeah, just denying a second draw from the Cruel Taskmaster. Unfortunately, that kind of removes like half the burst in his deck. Like the Tinker Sharpsword rolls are exactly what you need, 2 burst.
Especially against Warrior, where they stack armor, so you need to be able to deal with them. That's the biggest problem, is they already have so much armor, it's hard for you to go through it. And if you're on top of that using your Tinkers for removal, then it's even worse. It makes the whole matter even tougher.
Yeah. So again, this is going to be a very standard list from Reynad. He even has the Iron Beak Owl in his list.
Yeah.
This Big Game Hunter is actually pretty annoying because it's going to contest the Azure Drake that might come out from Hyped.
Are you forced to sap the Armor Smith in SI7? You're playing into weapons for no reason. It just feels like every play you make just feels so weird.
I don't think you can, to be honest, I don't think you can afford to sap.
If this straight face SI7 is fine, right?
Oh, wow.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same difference.
Yeah, like I don't think you can ever afford to sap an Armor Smith in this matchup. But I think this is fine just because you do have a sprint in your hand.
Well, Hyped is going to be waiting for that turn 7 fairly eagerly because he needs to get that draw as soon as possible. Oh man, Sylvanas comes out. So it's a Sylvanas into Sap into Sylvanas into Dr. Boom.
Yeah, and this is kind of the issue with Warrior versus with Control Warrior versus Rogue. Like for example, like the Dr. Boom comes on the field, and you can't even really sap it.
You don't want to, yeah.
Yeah, because the boom bots are just gonna wreck you, right?
Yeah, boom bots alone are enough to justify running it. So
that being said, Reynad doesn't have any weapons in his hands, so he's gonna have like somewhat of a difficult time dealing with these just like these kind of annoying SI agents.
Hyped is gonna have to he's gonna have to sprint into a prep sap, and that's gonna be the best he can do.
Yeah.
Or, you know, he can double trade the agents if he wants. Double trade the agents, play the Drake. It's not even bad.
Yeah.
It's bad, but it's not the worst. I mean, he's already used a sap, though. Oh my god, look at the value Sylvanas got. 1 sap and 2 SIs.
Yeah.
That's got to feel pretty bad.
I feel like trading your 2 minions and playing the Drake isn't too bad because you haven't seen any weapons from your opponent yet, and you have to assume like if your opponent does have weapons, then he's probably you want to play them already. Exactly.
Well, we'll see what Hype decides to do, but I think that is going to be a really good line of play. Really good. I mean, it's the best in those circumstances, but it's so bad in general. Ooh, there comes the first prep.
And even Blood Mage Soundness comes down. I think in this matchup, you just really want to go for that recursive damage. So getting the Blood Mage Soundness out here is really nice. And also,
man, this is good if he finds a deadly poison.
Yep.
Double Blade Flurry. Ew. Could still find a deadly with a prep. It's still really good. I mean, you prep into sprint. That's 4 mana only. You have 4 open mana. You're pretty good to go after that.
Exactly. Oh, even a Fan of Knives. I think that's fairly useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that. That is probably what he's gonna have to do. Attack Dr. Boom. Actually, wait. Oh. You have to Fan of Knives first and hope the Boom Boss don't kill your Drake. Which I think is... It's unlikely that they do, right? Like, the odds are against Reynad in this position for the Dr. Boom to live, but we've seen all sorts of outcomes from the Boom Bots. Yeah. I have learned not to trust the odds.
I mean, the Boom Bots could go both for 4 to the face, and then, like, a future Grom hit might just wreck you.
Well, we'll have to see how much those Boom Bots matter. Hyped, I don't think can play anything outside of the Phantom Knives play. You go face with Blood Mage, then you FOK, and then you trade the Drake into the Dr. Boom. You hope for the best. If the best doesn't work, yes, it does work. All right.
Yeah, we see Drake can still attack. So, ooh, 3 and 2. That's a pretty good scenario for Hyped, I would say.
Yeah, it didn't take any phase damage, and he was going to trade the Drake away anyway. I guess the best outcome would have been if the Blood Mage Thanos lived and he took like 1 to the face.
Yeah, Reynad just instantly slams Ragnaros onto the field.
Yep, free damage, forces the opponent to sap. It's going to delay him, but now Hyped has found the Violet Teacher to give himself a bit of value, but Reynad has the Brawl as a perfect counterplay.
Yeah, it's interesting that Reynad, he's drawn like 15 cards in his hand, or in his deck, yet there's still no weapons.
Yeah.
I think he's going to do all right with it, though. like just not drawing the weapons because has like all of his other tools. And at this point, you don't necessarily need the weapons.
Well, it would be nice to have one here because you could justify running a weapon into this board instead of something else. Do you consider Cruel Taskmaster execute on the Vile Teacher instead of another play?
Okay, so if you Cruel Taskmaster and execute, the issue I have with that play, I guess, is it doesn't really effectively use the mana well. I think you can possibly Brawl, and then if like the Vile Teacher survives, then you can go for the Cruel Taskmaster execute.
Yeah, I think Brawl first might be the better one. I mean, you're not getting that much value out of it, but at least it's a Brawl. It's something. Ragnaros alone is fine too, because it forces the opponent. You've seen 2 saps. So if he wants to get rid of it, like, you're either dead to some kind of massive amount of burst, or about dead to some massive amount of burst, or your opponent's going to be hard pressed to deal with Ragnaros.
Yeah, so this is the play. Oh, that's not what he wanted. This is the play that, like, you know that the rogue has used both saps, so you know that's going to stick on the field. So this is kind of more the long-term play.
Yeah, and the interesting part is Hyped can't even know if Reynad has Brawl, because he thinks to himself, Brawl was fine, wasn't amazing, but Reynad didn't represent it in any way. It didn't say anything that he played Ragnaros instead. So do you dagger deadly? Do you sprint first and see what what would you find even that would be useful for you?
I guess you're thinking that because your opponent played Ragnaros, there's not many options that he has to deal with your creatures. Like, he still doesn't have a weapon.
Oh, I have a play. What about sprint? You get a 1/1. You backstab Rag. Never mind. I was gonna say you backstab Rag, dagger up deadly. And then that sets up a Blade Flurry for the following turn. But he's just going to go for Flood the board, which is going to feed Reynad the Brawl that he wants at this point.
Yeah, this is kind of the, like, because this is such an unfavorable matchup for Rogue, you kind of have to make the plays that, the game-winning plays, even though they might be really risky.
Yeah, you go all in. Well, you know what? If he does find a haha, and there's no Shield Maiden or Sludge Belcher. Oh, never mind. That's going to be buying at least 1 turn. Okay, so I think here what you do is you go for Grom, Cruel Task, go face, and play the odds.
Wait, okay, really?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a great play.
Oh, of course. I would tend to agree with you. Why not, right?
Yeah.
But I guess.
Oh wait, what about Iron Beak Cowl or Rag? Wait, how much damage was that?
Not enough, but I think this is definitely the less manly play, but certainly the safer play.
Yeah, and you can even get to just play Cruel Task on the back of it to remove the minion.
Yeah.
Well, Hyped is gonna have to deal with this, and he just threw down all his stuff, so no more fuel for him outside of a sprint.
Yeah. You do have the sprint though, and whoa, what is that?
No, Hyped plays that a lot. I've seen 3 of his decks now have included the Defias Ringleader up until this point. I always get surprised, but it's a fairly effective card the way that he uses it.
Interesting. Like,
yeah.
how does he usually use it? You've seen?
It's just you sprinkle like 2 minions on the board that give you a potential outcome of 4 damage, so they have to spread the removal. And again, something like an Annoyotron start, it helps you really flesh out the removal with a dagger.
It's very interesting. Like, after the Defias Ringleader was nerfed to a 2/2 instead of a 2/3, we really haven't seen it used as much.
Yeah, almost not at all, in fact. So Reynad goes for the Grom, and it's actually fairly effective in this position because there's no more saps left. There's a Paladin Shredder that Hyped effectively plays. It's interesting because I was saying how if Hyped was playing a deck with Paladin Shredders, it might be easier to deal with a deck like Control Warrior, but even with that, it wasn't enough at this point. He could still win the game though. There's a lot of... he doesn't have burst, but he's got the board at the moment. Reynad's gonna have to shield slam this every time.
Ooh, there's the Death Spite, his first weapon. Reynad kind of shakes his head a bit. He's like, how can that be my first weapon? It's already turned like 12, and I've already drawn approximately like 15 to like 18 cards in my deck.
It's been insane.
Okay, so this both sets up the Death Spite and sets up a possible shield slam for the next turn.
All right. Well, Hyped has to find. I mean, I don't even mind this position for him. I mean, Dagger Up, Deadly, Tinkers, Go Fates, Blade Flurry. How much damage is that? That's 2, 6, 12. He's one off lethal. You've got to be kidding. I think you just drop your entire board and you win next turn.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like, especially the Lothab, it
Yeah.
pretty much locks your opponent out of the game.
Exactly. There's no way he can. Like, he could use Execute with the Death Bite, but it's going to cost him quite a bit of mana to do so, which means he can't use Shield Slam. But what Reynad really wants to do here, if there's 2 minions, is to play 2 Executes. It's got to be the most mana-efficient way to do this. So you attack face, you trade. Oh man, this is so bad. You know what? Reynad is in a world of hurt. You might just Shield Slam the 5/5, silence the 4/3, and then trade with the Shield Maiden, and then it leaves you 2 mana to armor up. That is probably the best way to play this, I think. You don't even use your weapon.
Yeah, but still, there's just so much damage coming from the rogue in the next turn.
Yeah, it's only 12 though. It's not enough to kill.
We've seen Hype draw like pretty much his entire deck though,
Yep.
and he might still have a South Sea deckhand. That being said, Hyped was running the Defiance Ringleader, so he must have cut something for that card.
Yeah.
And my guess is it's very likely that it is that South Sea deckhand, which he needs to win the game.
I would tend to agree with you here. I mean, I see the multiple lines of play that can be taken by both players, and based on what I saw from Hyped previously, South Sea might be in, but what do you cut for it? I mean, he hasn't cut the second Tinker's copy, which a lot of players do cut. I think Reynad's going to go for the Shield Slam silence play. Oh my god, if he does this, he's dead. If he attacks with his weapon...
Oh.
Whoa, he does not. Okay, wait.
Oh, nice.
Whoa. Did he just play Baron Geddon?
Now I think he's dead.
Yeah, he's
exactly.
Dead. Rest in peace. He had a much safer play.
Wow.
He had a much safer play with a Shield Slam. I'm actually curious to see what the reasoning was.
He did, but I think his line of thought was that he needed to develop the Baron Geddon in order to put
win?
pressure on the rogue.
Okay, I see. Just to get the win. Well, Hype's gonna take it. He drew his entire deck. So down to the very, very last card. Here, Reynad loses the game. A favorable matchup for Warrior, but Hyped did take it. That brawl, even though it was good for Reynad, was not enough. And I think it came down to the weapons that he couldn't find early enough. That's really something you want to get as fast as possible. And even those Sludge Belchers help a lot against Rogue.
Yeah, he just wasn't as efficient as he might have wanted to be in dealing with the first minions. And even though he drew a lot of cards, they were kind of really situational cards like Shield Slam and Execute that he didn't have any ways to combo with. Like, he didn't have a lot of activators with those cards, and he didn't draw the Shield Maiden until late into the game.
Very late.
He never drew the shield blocks, I believe.
Yep. So that was a little unfortunate because the power of Control Warrior is to, stack as much armor as possible to make the Rogue's Burst irrelevant. And even though Hyped had to use his first Tinkers as removal, he still punched through the armor of the Warrior. So very, very strong play for him. Now, that means the Rogue from Hyped is locked out, which means Reynad has to go for his Hunter or his Warrior again.
Oh, we do have confirmation from the admins that Reynad indeed will be using his Hunter, and Hyped will be using the Warrior.
All right, so if this is Face Hunter versus Control Warrior, this is generally favored for the Warrior. But if the Hunter can get an amazing curve, and if the Warrior misses, the armor drops. Armor Smith, Shield Blocks, Shield Maidens, and the obvious clutch Alex Straza very often in the late game, then it's possible that the Face Hunter takes it.
Yeah, what I've discovered though is in the Face Hunter versus Control Warrior matchup, is that it's usually determined by the first few starting turns. Like, if the Face Hunter can get like a lot of threats out and just get a lot of recursive damage with Leper Gnomes and things like Haunted Creepers, then the Face Hunter can win.
Yep.
But besides that, like if the Warrior has any kind of removal, like Armor Smith, Fire War Axe, or Cool Taskmaster, and in the early game stuff, he can basically just snowball the game out from there.
Yeah,
so it is a matchup that is determined by who has the better early game start.
Yeah, it usually boils down to that in Hearthstone anyway, right? It's all about getting the good curve, but in this matchup it matters even more because the early game of the Warrior sets him up to transition into even tougher mid game because he needs those Armor Smiths and those Acolytes of Pain to draw into the Sludge Belchers to defend against the onslaught from the Hunter, and the Hunter has no card draw effectively. He's relying on slamming something on the board, going face, and letting the opponent make the trade. But if your opponent makes the trade and gets armor out of it or a card, then he's effectively happy that you're letting him trade.
Well, I guess hunters will just have to wait until Blackrock Mountain comes out.
With quick shot, right?
With quick shot, exactly.
Yeah, easy life. And one day they might get a card that removes all the armor from the opponent.
Ooh, like
useful in 1 or 2 matchups.
Armor acid or something. Oh no, like 3 matchups, right?
Piercing shot. You just take out all the armor and deal 1 damage.
Exactly. It's helpful against warrior. It's helpful against mage and druid.
Yeah, with the ice barrier.
Of course, yeah.
And the obvious, claw bite druid that everybody's playing.
Oh yeah, it's the standard druid that.
Savagery Blinktron.
Yeah, we've seen a lot on ladder recently.
Yeah, I'm tired of Savagery Blinktron. I think that combo's a bit OP.
Yeah, it is.
They might want to nerf it.
It is the most OP combo in druid after all. The most, the one that always like clears my board and deals a lot of damage to my face, kills me from 14 HP.
Yeah, people don't realize it, but like I had a druid once play Blinktron, and then he played bite and claw, and then I died because he got Doomhammer. And I think that was a bit broken. And like the other time where it happened, I mean, he played Blinktron on turn 10, and then followed by Harrison Jones to draw cards. Then he coined out a Savagery to kill my taunt, and then he could attack face. I feel like Blinktron Druid is going to kick off a lot, especially after Blackrock Mountain. When the dragons come out, that's when it's going to be very relevant because people will be cutting weapon removal. So Blinktron becomes even more effective.
Yeah. So yeah, Noxious, you obviously have a lot of experience with Blinktron here.
Yeah, I know my stuff.
Yeah. But possibly not as much stuff as Ben Brode.
Yeah.
Sir Ben Brode.
Oh, shots fired. Yeah, I took that shot. It's fine. I'll take it. Ben Brode knows too much about the game, but he is the creator. I wasn't that far behind him, was I? In the Jeoparino? I was like 1,000 points, right?
You did well. You did well.
It wasn't too bad. Yeah.
You destroyed Crip.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think Crip just had we couldn't see the bottle.
Yeah, I noticed
that was a big problem. It was like I couldn't see the bottle when he raises it.
Exactly. It was like a clear bottle, and Ben Brode had like an obvious foe, and he had like a red thingy.
Yeah, I think it's all about min-maxing the buzzer. Once you min-max the buzzer, you're good to go. Ben Brode also had the advantage of being far from the camera, so when he lifted his phone like this, it's a really small movement to be seen. Whereas I was very close, so in order to be seen, I had to make a bigger movement in that case.
Maybe he planned that out.
I think so, because he was really far away from everything for no reason. I think Ben Brode really min-maxed his buzzer.
Yeah, very true.
Gotta give him that. Well, we should be going to the game shortly when Hyped comes back from a short break. Hunter versus Warrior. If it mid-range Hunter, which I haven't seen much of. I mean, I saw for a while the dominant classes were Hunter, Mage, and Druid together, like the trio of the power trio. But recently, mid-range Hunter's just been falling out of favor.
Yeah, it's a very popular deck in the Chinese scene, and the Chinese scene actually thinks it's the best deck in the metagame. But recently in the Western metagame, like we haven't seen it much. Only pretty much 9-man plays it. And I talked to him. He thinks like this matchup in particular, mid-range Hunter versus Warrior, is kind of 50-50. Yeah. We're gonna see from the opening hands is what kind of Hunter this is, and well, Reynad's gonna be very sad because he's playing Phase Hunter against Warrior. In fact, a Warrior with Fire War Axe opening hand. Yeah.
I'll be right back. Give me a sec.
Yeah, sure. He has the Fire War Axe, so all he needs now is either the Cruel Taskmaster or the Armor Smith, and he kind of gets exactly what he needs. Fire War Axe is great, but I had to deal with like mad scientists and knife strugglers. But you kind of want a more efficient way to deal with this Leper Gnome. Eagle Horn Bow is an interesting pick. I always see like when Reynad is always casting, he always says that he usually keeps the Eagle Horn Bow in a lot of matchups because it can deal with like a lot of 3 health minions, such as that Acolyte of Pain. So Leper Gnome comes out, and wow, what a great top deck from Hyped and Armor Smith. We'll be able to respond exactly to that Leper Gnome. But no, actually, wow. Fire War Axe is another choice. So with Fire War Axe, what this means is now that Reynad will be kind of locked out of the Glaive Zuka turn. Glaive Zuka won't get as much value, and Leper Gnome won't get as much recursive damage onto Hype's face. Yeah, so unfortunately, Reynad is kind of sad. He just has to hero power every single turn. And now we might see, just like I said, like Control Warrior will snowball the game because he was able to deal with the first 2 threats, and basically that's pretty much all you need from the Warrior's perspective.
Yeah, based on what I'm looking at here, it doesn't look very good for Reynad. As you said, he's sad to run into Control Warrior. One with the perfect answers as well. Doesn't look too good for him.
Yeah,
Did
so,
Hype throw the second War Axe, or did he just equip the second one recently? No, he threw the second one, right?
Yeah, he threw the first one,
Alright.
the second one back, yeah. And he attacked the first Leopard Gnome with his Fire War Axe, and he's looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the Armor Smith, the Acolyte of Pain, the Fiery War Axe. That's exactly what we were talking about just before the match started.
Yeah,
If they can get that, it's very difficult.
Not only that, he has a lot of like low value minions on the board, so like Knife Juggler is gonna get just wrecked by the Fiery War Axe. Wolf Rider, for example, is gonna get wrecked by any number of the minions on the board.
Just, I think Reynad may be considering just going full face from now on. And, you know, just there's no point trying to deal with this board because it's just going to get out of control.
I do feel that you, at some point in this game, you should deal with the Armor Smith because over time, that Armor Smith is going to get a lot of value.
Like, picture just a Hunter's Mark play, right, with Unleash eventually. It's not unthinkable. Oh, he does hit it once. And then remove the armor with steady shot, so... As you said, at some point you want to deal with the Armor Smith. Seems like it's now. Actually, this sets up a really good turn 5 with Knife Juggler, Hunter's Mark on the Acolyte, and then Unleash the Hounds.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, I really do like that setup for turn 5 by Reynad.
Although, kind of have to be worried about that Acolyte of Pain.
It's going to be one card draw with Hunter's Mark. I mean, I guess you won the Iron BKL for Sludge Belcher, though, so now you feel like you've thrown away one of your best answers. Yeah, you're going to have to rely on Kill Command.
Yeah, pretty good setup for Reynad.
Wow.
After this, he's going to be in a fairly favorable position, like considering the matchup, of course.
Wait, what? Armor Smith gives you armor even after... What did I see? The Armor Smith, even if it dies from the first knife, still goes through the entire sequence. It gives you armor for each knife hit.
Although, it doesn't save you if you're at 0 HP, though.
Wow, that's a pretty nice top deck for Hyped.
I'm not entirely sure if you use it this turn, though. I feel like just the Sludge Belcher is better.
Yeah. Now, in this position, Sludge Belcher is better, but it's pretty useful because a lot of the smaller minions that hunters play die to Cruel Task. Or at least they help you, you know, it helps you deal with most of them.
Yeah, I feel like this is just going to be a Sludge Belcher turn in combination with hitting the Knife Juggler. So first taunt is going to come up, and even if Reynad top decks an IRB Gal, more taunts are going to follow.
Alright, Kill Command going out. Not to the face. It feels as good as when you get a mage to fireball one of your minions. If not better. The Hound stays into play, but probably not for long.
Oh. Brawl.
Hello.
Probably not the best card to draw right now.
No, it's amazing. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I guess. Maybe.
You go turn 7 on Stable Ghoul Brawl, and then if it dies, you kill all the 1 health minions. This is great.
Oh, man. I didn't think of that.
It's crazy.
You just enlightened me, Noxious.
Yeah, like he plays Haunted Creeper, you go Unstable Ghoul Brawl, and then if it dies, you just kill everything, because your Death Rattle triggers second. It's crazy. Best value NA.
Yeah.
It's actually not too bad, even if I'm being sarcastic, but when I think of it, it's actually not bad. I stumbled upon a play by accident.
I mean, like you're not going to get value out of Brawl in this matchup usually anyway, but I feel like you're probably still going to want a hero power on every single turn from now on. So using up 7 mana just to Unstable Ghoul and Brawl, I'm not sure about that one.
Alright, you're right. He's not going to do that. He's too reasonable. Well, that Glaive Zuka is probably a better use. I mean, this is probably a better Glaive Zuka than it is an Abusive, because otherwise you waste off the Abusive for no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Reynad's got to decide.
Reynad, he's thinking about whether he wants to deal 1 damage to his Hunter Creeper.
Or not, yeah.
I'm not sure about that one.
So do you play the Abusive Sergeant for recurring damage, or do you keep it to use it with the Hunter Creeper?
I feel like you keep it because it's always going to be able to get 2 damage out anytime you use it with a charge.
Oh, wow.
If you just lay it out on the board, it might just die for free, like to this Cruel Taskmaster, for example.
Alright, well Reynad is in top deck mode against a warrior with 20 health late in the game.
And Shield Maiden, in fact.
Yep, Shield Maiden and possible follow-ups with an Acolyte of Pain that is guaranteed to draw at least one more card. So that's going to increase the options for Hyped. This is not Reynad's dream matchup.
No, certainly not. In fact, probably the opposite.
Yep.
I would say, it's not as bad as Freeze Mage versus Control Warrior, but this is probably like the top, at least in the top 3 or 4 worst matchups in all of Hearthstone. Harrison Jones, unfortunately, just slightly too late, but I think
Do you like
okay
Baron
with
Geddon
that.
here? You just pop the spider, you drop Baron Geddon, and like the second trap's not gonna come out, right? Because there's already one. I mean, it feels a bit dangerous because your health is lowering, but you've got a Shield Maiden on the back end. He plays a weapon, you got Harrison Jones.
Yeah, that's true.
And you deal 7 damage a turn, so what can go wrong? You can even enrage your Grom next turn on the explosive trap, in fact. Yeah, there's a near lethal looming actually with Baron Geddon right now. The thing is, if the Hunter top decks what he needs, well, he could just switch back to defensive gears with Shield Maiden Sludge.
All right, so yeah, like you said, so if he does play Baron Geddon now, the Hunter will be at 19, and then
Yeah,
that is
It's
lethal.
gonna be lethal with the Grom Hellscream, but he's not gonna play that. He's gonna play it a bit safer or slower, I guess. Not safer necessarily, but just much slower with the Sludge Belcher. Oh, Iron Beak Owl pops out. Well, that's not what Hyped wants to see. That's what Reynad wants to see. More phase damage here. SM Orc.
Yeah, it's gonna be actually like Hyped might actually be in a slightly dangerous position if he didn't have this Shield Maiden.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that Shield Maiden, this might be a bit more difficult.
But I think like he can still afford just to play the slow game because I feel like Hyped on average will be able to heal more life than Reynad can deal to him on any given turn.
I mean, you could even play Grom Hellscream here and hit the owl with it. You know, like just set up a really huge follow-up. Like you play Grom, you attack the 2-1 with your Sludge, you attack the 2-1 with your Grom, and you get yourself like 15 damage set up. Then you Shield Maiden armor up, and you're pretty good to go.
Yeah, I like that.
I feel like he's got to play more aggressively to win the game as fast as possible. He could have started last turn, but
Yeah.
he didn't have to.
Yeah, like exactly. Like he can just play the same turn that he did the last turn, that you suggested on the last turn, and get the Baron Geddon out. This also allows him to weave in a hero power.
Yep, to get the armor up, which is maybe why he waited 1 turn to get that extra armor.
That's certainly possible.
Yeah, because you curve out with Baron Geddon on turn 9, and then you curve out with Grom on turn 10, so you're always 2 health ahead. And there is a guaranteed lethal here for Hyped.
Yeah, and I think Reynad is definitely suspecting it. Even if it's like a Ragnaros, for example, it's still like close to lethal. But yeah, he has the exact card that he needs. He has the Grom Hellscream.
Yep.
And that's gonna be it. Hyped
17 damage plus the 2 damage AoE at the end of the turn. That is going to seal it.
Yeah, and Hyped is gonna take a 2-1 lead over his teammate and boss Reynad.
Oh yeah. So what is it? The student teaches the master, right? Is that what they say? So Hyped has a mage deck left, so I'm really eager to see what it is because Rogue and Mage are the 2 decks that he plays the most, from what I gather. And I mean, Flood Mage came out of Tempo Storm recently, right? Out of Reynad, in fact. So I wonder if Hyped is going to be bringing that, or if he's just going to go with some of the more standard builds.
Yeah, I really hope he uses the Flood Mage because it'll be such sweet justice that Flood Mage defeats Reynad, the creator of the deck, right?
Yeah.
I wonder like what Reynad thinks every time when a Zoo deck beats him. He's like,
yeah, I was gonna say.
yeah, what have I
made that.
unleashed onto the world? Right?
Yeah, what did I do to this? Like, what have I done? What have I done in this world? Like, I wonder if he feels bad about the whole Zoo time, where it was literally the deck that 90% of the ladder played for about an entire 2 weeks. I wonder sometimes if he looks at this and he's like, you know what? This is a nightmare.
Now we're getting word that Hyped will be playing Mage,
Yep.
whereas Reynad will be playing his Face Hunter. So, if Hype's Mage is indeed the Flood Mage, it's actually going to be a really bad matchup against Face Rogue. Even though you have the mirror images, I feel like the Face Hunter can just like snowball too much and just go for face. Because the Flood Mage, first of all, it doesn't have any heals. Second of all, it's extremely vulnerable to Unleash the Hounds and Explosive Trap.
Well, I think the worst matchup is in fact that. Like, Face Hunter has such an easy time with you. Like, anytime you put something down, you get punished. Your minions die to Explosive Trap. Unleash the Hounds is feeding your opponent value because you're always flooding the board. That's kind of the way it works. And getting, like, the way that you win with Flood Mage is by getting card advantage, right? A good Echo of Medivh, good Duplicate. But it's irrelevant against Hunter. It's irrelevant. Well, you have to raise. You don't have time to raise if you can't get... Like, against a Warrior, for instance, it's pretty good because you get to force them to use removal on too many things.
All right, but no, it's just going to be Mech Mage. And we noticed that there's actually 2 Harvest Golems in this Mech Mage. And what that tells me is that it's actually going to be Reynad's Mech Mage. Reynad prefers to use these Harvest Golems instead of some Spire Tanks in his Mech Mage. And he's also going to run probably the 2 Water Elementals plus the Blingtron 3000. So, Noxious, you're getting your wish. We're going to see possibly a Blingtron 3000 in the series.
Well, what's really nice about not only Blingtron, but about the Water Elemental against Hunters, that they do have nowadays, at the very least, 3 weapons. You see either 1 bow, 2 Glaive Zukas, 2 Glaive Zukas, 2 bows, or a mix of, of those specific weapons. So generally speaking, Water Elemental, if it sticks on the board, is going to give you value. So it's a really great target for something like a Hunter's Mark if Hype is playing Water Ellie.
Yeah. Of course, the Water Ellie is going to lock out a lot of the weapons that Reynad is going to have.
Snow Chuggers even work.
Yeah.
Oh man. He's going to get the... I can't believe he's going to get a more aggressive start than Face Hunter.
That's true. I mean, but this is what Mech Mage does.
Yeah, get a Mech Warper, flood the board, win the game. And what I like about Harvest Golem is that in a deck, and I mean in a metagame that's filled with rogues, it's much harder to kill. They can't just eviscerate it. They have to deadly poison and then find another source of ping, which oftentimes is not very easy to find because they tend to cut Shiv out of their decks nowadays.
Yeah, I actually kind of like the Harvest Golem in this matchup too because it trades a little better with all the minions that Face Hunter could possibly have, like the small 2/1s or 2/2s, or even the 1/2s of like the Haunted Creeper. So kind of a good choice to put this in the deck instead of the Spider Tank against this particular Face Hunter that he might have been expecting from Reynad.
Yeah. It's still anyone's game at this point. We see on Unleash the Hounds, and that on its own could turn the game around. It's a very strong card against a deck like Mage.
Yeah, one of the weaknesses of this Mage deck is that it doesn't really have AoE to deal with like these really annoying 2/2 and just these small creatures. Pretty much the only option it has is the Goblin Blast Mage, and as we can see, Hype does not currently have that card in his hand, so he might be forced to play a bit more defensively than he would like to.
I wonder if Flame Waker is going to do something about those decks, because I mean, in Flood Mage, it feels to me like Flame Waker is a perfect fit. It turns the deck into a Mech Mage without having, like, you don't have the Blast Mage, but instead you got the Flame Waker in a deck that's very aggressive, and that's kind of my dream card for that Flood Mage deck.
Yeah, and not only Flood Mage, I think it's going to be really good in Tempo Mage. Yep. Currently, Tempo Mage, it doesn't really have really great 3-drops. I mean, it runs Kirin Tor Mage, but other than that, it really has nothing.
Well, Hype is thinking this through because it's probably got to do with the Mad Scientist outcomes. Because, once that Explosive Trap comes down, that's what you're worried about.
Yeah, you really have to consider, like, there's going to be an Explosive Trap coming out in the next turn or two. So you have to really be playing around that.
Can you try to raise here? I feel like you could let the Hunter make the trades.
It's possible.
Yeah, and he does exactly that, actually.
Oh, so... Usually, drawing the second Explosive Trap is really bad as the Hunter, but actually, I think in this matchup, it's not too bad at all because you can, like we said, Kalento has said before that the Explosive Trap is actually sometimes better than Mad Scientist in this particular matchup, right?
Yeah. So Reynad is setting up an Explosive Trap, and he's forcing Hype to trigger it, essentially, with this play.
Yeah.
That was weird. Did you see all the sequencing? Didn't it look weird to you?
Yeah, I guess...
A lot of it really made me wonder what that secret was for a while.
Yeah, I guess I think it's definitely Explosive Trap because we saw the Explosive Trap
being grayed out.
Greened out. but it might make Hyped question it, and it also might It also sets up for Unleash the Hounds. For example, if Hyped
doesn't trade with the trap, doesn't trigger it, just sets up a lot of 1 health minions for Unleash to get value in. Well, that's not too bad. Getting another trap, that's more damage, so Reynad can actually afford going full face here, putting back some pressure onto Hyped.
Yeah.
He's gonna have to trigger a second trap. That's not what he wants to do here. Feed Hunters, 3 damage a pop from the weapon.
The secret coming out from the Mech Mage is almost certainly going to be Mirror Entity, and that secret, it's really good in a lot of other matchups, but against Face Hunter is actually not that great because...
Feed them a minion, yeah.
Yeah, basically like, for Unleash the Hounds too, but also a lot of the Hunter minions, they're just like 3-1 chargers, and when you Mirror Entity them, you basically don't get the charge out of it. So basically, the Face Hunter can give your opponent Magma Ragers.
Yeah, because you don't get the benefit of Mirror Entity is that you're getting the minion with charge because you get to use it without paying for it, which in this case is the exact opposite. How much do you like Arcane Golem, Iron Beak Owl, and the Snow Chugger and just going full face? Because that way you're not frozen.
Yeah.
And you're still forcing a trade because you're putting a lot of pressure on this opponent.
You do really want to fit in hero powers though.
Yeah, you want to weave them in.
Yeah. One trick that Firebat recently taught me was that you really want to look at your hand, see how much mana is in your hand, and then based off of that, you want to like count how many hero powers you need to fit over the next turns. So right now, I think like Reynad doesn't necessarily need to fit in hero powers, and this is actually a pretty good play. It also allows him to use the bow charge in the following turns.
Well, that's a great top deck for Hype, though. Double Fireball here. You just ping that Owl and you Fireball face attack with Snow Chugger. Although he might decide to ping the face, depending on how much damage he's calculating he's got.
Let's see, so he's down to 9.
I think you could justify pinging, because next turn you can ping Fireball, freeze a minion with Emergency Coolant, or... Wait, no, you could just switch around your Snow Chugger and win. Right? Yeah, you could actually just reversing switch Fireball and you win. If Reynad doesn't address the Snow Chugger, the game's over.
Or unless he gets a Misha.
Actually, even if he does, I think the game's over. Well, it's not bad, but it's not what he wants. That's not what he needs. What does he even need at this point? So you trade with the Snow Chugger, you have to. You can't afford taking that Snow Chugger to the face. Reynad cannot afford making that mistake. And he doesn't.
Yeah, this actually is better. He trades with the Arcane Golem so that it retains at least 1 beast on the board if the Hound gets pinged off.
And I think that might be what wins the game. Actually. Yep, this looks like... Yeah, this looks like a win because Leroy Jenkins plus a weapon. If there was a Frostbolt or if Emergency Coolant could freeze the phase, that would be a different story, but it's not. In this specific case, Leroy Jenkins is a win. And Hype knows that Kill Command is an out. There's a few more cards in his deck that could do it.
Yep, well, and that's it.
That's gonna be it.
The top deck doesn't even matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. Leopard Gnome is just there for show. It's useless. Reynad is gonna equalize the series 2-2. This team match is actually gonna go down to the very, very last deck, where we're gonna see this this Mech Mage again from Hyped versus Reynad's last deck. What is the last deck? A Druid, right? Or did he win with that one already? No, he already won.
No, he already won. Yeah. So it's gonna be Warrior against Mech Mage, I believe.
Yep, which is generally speaking a toss-up. With Water Elementals, if they're teched in with Hyped, it can be a better matchup. And we saw Ysera earlier in Reynad's deck, which makes it a bit greedy. So Mage can exploit that fairly well.
Yeah, and not only that, the Blingtron 3000 is actually pretty good against Warrior because it can sometimes override the weapon that Warriors already have.
Yeah.
Like for example, if it overrides the Death Spite, Mech Mage can actually use that effectively, just using the Death Rattle to their own effect, planning out when it hits instead of letting the Warrior pick when it hits.
Pick what it wants, because usually they'll keep that for a specific time when they play, you know, an Acolyte of Pain behind it, and then they attack a minion, it triggers, and they get a card draw. If you get to force it to be triggered initially, then they're gonna get no value, at least less value out of it. Unfortunately, though, sometimes you give them a better weapon, That's something that happened quite often. Like you end up giving them a choose over champion, which is just horrible. Or you give them a Sword of Justice with a Sludge Belcher on the back end. So they play it, it's a 4-6, they get a 2-3 with taunt, and then you're just biting yourself. But I mean, Blingtron is a card that a lot of people disregarded initially, but it furthers the mage's agenda, because if the enemy uses the weapon as removal, a lot of the time it can be used. For you it translates into face damage, and if they don't use it, then you're fine, and you get a weapon which furthers the damage to the face that you can put out.
Yeah, it's just really great, especially in combination with that Snow Chugger and Wild Elemental that you might see in Hype Stack.
Alright, so we are looking at a double Blast Mage start, which, because of Death's Bite, is a bit awkward, I'd say.
Yeah.
But Anotron is great against Warrior.
We're going to see if Hype goes with like the Life Coach plan, which is, if Life Coach were playing this matchup, he would definitely keep at least one Goblin Blast Mage.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, quote-unquote, the most imbalanced card in the entire deck. The card that has most value for the amount of mana it costs.
It is the card that pushes Mech Mage into viability. We have to be honest, like, for an archetype to be viable, you need unfair cards, and I think Blast Mage is exactly that for Mech, and that's probably the reason you don't see as many mechs for other classes, right? Other classes are trying to make Mech work, but very few of them can do it because they have nothing to compare to Blast Mage, and I think a lot of the time, and I've tried that out, you play a lot of Mech decks, and you end up thinking to yourself, why am I not just playing Mage instead?
Yeah, exactly. Like the closest any other class has gotten is probably the Shaman mech deck, and that basically has the Power Mace over the Goblin Blast Mage. But when you compare those two cards, you have to think that Goblin Blast Mage probably is slightly better.
Oh man, hyped. Yes, the Mech Warp opener with the Snow Chugger and the Annoyotron. You want to talk about an annoying board?
And meanwhile, Reynad has he has Ysera in his hand. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's it. Just like one dead card for the entire match at the very least. So if you play as Fiery War Axe here, which I think is a great play, if you're hyped, do you just play Mad Scientist to force the ping, and then you follow up with Mech Warper, Coin, Annoyotron, Snow Chugger?
Yeah, I like that a lot. What a brilliant play, Noxious. Just getting the Mirror Entity out as fast as possible, and then saving the Mech Warper, for example, just to get a whole host of minions out on one turn.
The worst, even. I mean, those are the most annoying minions. Number one, he has to deal with the shield, he has to deal with the body, and he has to deal with the Snow Chugger that's going to lock out all the weapons.
Yeah, and the Annoyotron and the Snow Chugger actually work in tandem really well. Yeah, because you can't actually kill the Snow Chugger in one turn, so the Snow Chugger is actually going to lock out the Fire Wax over a series of turns.
What I think is going to happen here is that he's going to play Big Game Hunter first and then kill the... Because if you don't play BGH now, the drawback is you can never kill an Annoyotron. It's impossible. You can't contest the board of a Mech Mage at this point. If you don't do that, oh my god, he finds the other Mech Warper.
So what happens
He's going to be
now?
able to play everything besides Frostbolt. Every single card in his hand is going to be dropped and vomited on that board, and there is no brawl in Reynad's hand.
I would say that's a huge draw, if anything.
Yeah, that's a huge draw. Yeah, Admirable would say that. And you're allowed to say it too. Oh my goodness, look at this. Holy crap.
Yeah, Reynad, all he can do is pucker his lips and nod.
Well, Hyped is going to have to find a new team after this. This is, oh my goodness.
Well, that's actually a really good top deck.
Yeah, it is. It
Reynad.
really is. Yeah, we were talking about how good what Hyped got. This is the perfect Mirror Entity trigger, and it also allows Reynad to contest the board fairly nicely by... you know what? It's not that bad. He just needs to find a Sludge Belcher now.
Yeah,
and another Shield Maiden.
Like, before that card was top deck, like, Reynad was almost certainly going to lose this game, but that was actually exactly what he needed there. He kind of rounds out his entire hand.
He's going to have to kill the Snow Chugger with the 4-2, and then he kills the Mech Warper, and then finishes off the Iron Beak Owl with the cool Taskmaster. It gives him a turn 5 that allows him to armor up and then play Shield Slam, and that's kind of a whiff. Not a huge one, mind you, but kind of a whiff.
Oh yeah, almost certainly.
So you have to use the Harvest Golem to trade here, keep the Frostbolt for the Archmage Antonitis, or to slow down something else that the Warrior does, if only the weapon.
This reminds me a lot of like some Druid openings where they get pretty much everything they want, and then
like,
they get an Innervate out like into something like a piloted Shredder, But then the opponent deals with the Pilot Shredder, and then they whiff for the next 3 or 4 turns.
Yeah, they get the innervate. Oh, what a huge Tinkertown technician. Oh, well, never mind.
Literally huge.
It's on the board, doesn't want to leave. Oh, finicky Cloakfield.
Exactly. Not only literally huge, but also
goody.
figuratively huge, because on turn 8, that Archmage Anti-Ice is going to do some work.
Yeah, but that Sylvanas is also going to be helpful for Reynad. The problem is not necessarily as helpful as Reynad wants it to be. I mean, Mirror Entity here is a really good play. You just drop it and you forget about it. Let the opponent handle this. Now Hyped has to figure out how he wants to approach this, and I feel like one of the ways is to either just go full face and let Reynad trade. Because you've got Archmage, you need to put your opponent on the clock, and that seems to me like the most opportune play.
Yeah, he's not going to let his opponent, like, really, curve out, but...
Oh, that's a great play. Cruel Task killed the Tinkertown. And then you get to armor up in Acolyte.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Cruel tasking, of course, you're talking about cruel tasking your own Sylvanas.
Yeah, or the Tinkertown. Pick your choice.
Yeah.
Either way, Sylvanas needs to die. She has no time for games.
Exactly. What a cruel taskmaster, killing off your own minions.
Well, he's got to get to work. He's putting them to work. That's what he does. He's a little less nice than the Abusive Sergeant, mind you. That's a good Jeoparino question. You just make a... They both do the same thing. Oh, Mech Warper, okay.
I'm not sure how many mechs are in this deck, but
Yeah,
I guess that works.
What could he even... I mean, Paladin Sky Golem and Paladin Shredder have seen play in Control Warrior just...
Yeah, usually just the Piloted Shredder, though. And I believe we might have seen at least one before in Reynad's Control Warrior deck.
Yep. Well, there's definitely one in Hyped, and you know what? This is a great top deck. It allows him to continue the pressure. Something he was running a little short on at this point.
Yeah, and it also allows him to curve out into a turn 8 play with the Archmage and Finicky Cloakfield.
Yep.
Well, I have to note that I like Hype's positioning, placing it in the middle, which allows him to play into a possible Flametongue Totem or a Direwolf Alpha.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier because the way that the Pilot Shredder works is that it spawns the thing exactly where it was, as opposed to other effects that sometimes spawn it on the far side, like Totem or Feral Spirit. When it dies off a Death Rattle, when it comes out of a Death Rattle, it's exactly where it was. Now, Reynad wants a Brawl here, right? I guess that's not too bad either, but you probably want to play Shield Maiden over that.
Yeah, I would definitely say Shield Maiden. Harrison Jones, probably not the best in this matchup, and
well,
Reynad,
Blingtron, you know, if Blingtron does come out...
That's true.
Actually, that's actually really funny.
I have to say, though, like, Blingtron, after looking at it a bit more, Blingtron might not be in this deck because we haven't seen the the water elementals. Instead, we've seen the Piloted Shredders. So it just might be a hype decision to cut the Spider Tanks in favor of the Harvest Golems. And that might be the only cut, or the only change in this deck compared to normal, standard mech mages.
The only time where it's really weak anyway is when you're facing against Control Warrior and they get Death Bite, or against another mech mage that has Spider Tanks, where you're trading your 2-3 into their 3-4, and then they get to ping the remaining body. But in general, it's kind of fine. If I don't see Archmage Finicky Cloakfield here, my name is Sean Paul. Although, what if there's a brawl, right? Maybe that's what's hyped. What hyped is worried about.
I don't think you can play around that.
Of course not.
At this point,
he's got to be wondering.
You can somewhat play around it by trading your Harvest Golem into the Mech Warper.
Right, by increasing the chances that you keep what you want.
Well, you can't always get what you want. I heard that from I learned that from a song. Yeah.
Yeah. Too much karaoke, Monk. Okay, you know what would be awesome? A Doomsayer out of that Pilot Shredder. If there's ever been a time for a Doomsayer out of a Pilot Shredder, it is now.
All right.
If there has ever been a time, I think this is it.
You get it? No, Death Spite is not a brawl.
Yeah, you're not using that weapon, I don't think. That's too much damage coming up, and it's not a Doomsayer. You can play Sludge Belcher and stop the Archmage at the very least.
And you can at least survive for the next turn.
Yep, you're even going to get to keep your armor for the time being, so... Although, honestly, at this point, when you're high, I mean, all he has to do is Fireball twice, and that's it. He just passes and forgets about anything he's ever done. So Reynad has to find Loatheb, but it's good game. And even if he does, I think it's a good game.
Yeah, I just don't think you can deal with so many fireballs.
Yeah, just double fireball phase and trade into... Do you even trade? I guess you do, but does it matter?
The funny thing is, like, you kind of do want to ping.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the funny part. But you really want to get extra fireballs. I mean, getting 2 fireballs cycled is probably more optimal. I mean, it may be the case that your Archmage is never going to live past this point. So just abuse him while you can. Like, you might trade into the 2-1 slime with your 2-1 and then go face for 5 and then fireball again. Yeah, that's what he does. Doesn't want to damage the Archmage for the time being.
Yeah, I like this. Just kind of ignoring the 5-1 shield man. It's not really threatening you too much.
Well, Reynad cannot get out of the 4 health count. If anything, he needs to find not this. This is not what he wants. That is not what he wants. And he's going to commit Sudoku. The honorable Mitsubishi has been committed by Reynad here. And Hyped is going to take the series against Reynad. That was a really intense game. Intense series, rather. 3-2. I can't really say that I've seen any big flaws in either player's lineups. I feel like both of them were well-rounded. But that double mech warp opening from Hyped was disgusting.
Yeah, I have to say, like, Reynad actually dealt with it as best as he could. He had like pretty insane top deck in the form of Iron Beak Owl, but just that insane opening in combination with the finicky Coke field coming from the spare part, it was just too much for Reynad to handle.
I think it's the best thing you can get as well. I mean, against Warrior, your win condition is effectively a good Archmage, right? You get a Doctor Boom on curve, or you get an Archmage later on with a spare part. And that's generally the way you're going to be able to go through that last layer of armor if the Warrior has accumulated any.
Yeah, it's definitely like the finishing blow. If you don't finish out the game in the first, let's say, 6 or 7 turns, you will probably need your Archmage to Antonitis.
Yep, I would tend to agree. All right, well, that's going to seal the series here for the team kill. Hyped is going to be going up 4-1. Reynad is going to be 2-3 in the entire KPL. Hyped is going to be playing up against RDU afterwards. RDU is having a tough run right now in Kinguin Pro League. He's 1-4. Hyped is 4-1. So if Hyped wins this next match against RDU, he's going to be going 5-1, which is going to be the best score up until now, unless Shrivecrow beats it and gets 6-0 in this. Gets 6-0, not 6-0. I need to kind of specify.
Yeah. Yeah, Noxious 6-0. 6-0 is in the other group.
Yeah, that's right.
He's in the Alliance group, right?
So Hype could be the best player so far if he gets the win against RDU next, and Shrivecrow could, defend the champion title of the entire event so far in the next week. For the time being, we're going to go for a 10 minutes break. Kinguin Pro League is going to keep going. We have 2 more matches for the day. Don't go